I've heard all the fuss, I've heard all the kerfuffle, I want to get into fighting games too. I'm gonna buy Guilty Gear Strive and learn how to play fighting games. That's probably you right now, and you probably are starting up the game for the first time, or you've started it up, and you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Let's talk through what to do when you first get started with Guilty Gear. Now, the first thing you do is you communicate with the server for about 3 hours. Luckily, you get to skip past this process. I don't. Once you're through, I believe on the first startup it will prompt you to go into the tutorial straight away. I'm not going to linger on this tutorial very long. It doesn't justify lingering on it very long. It's not a good tutorial. It only really applies if you're sat down next to a friend and you get a chance to play against them and like press some buttons. You get a couple of little cutscenes between Sol and Kai, and honestly, it doesn't really do much. It just throws a bunch of buttons at you and it tells you to beat up Kai, which everyone's you want to beat up Kai. And that's all you get. And honestly, from that point on, it's really not that useful. There's not really too much more to say about it. This doesn't teach you anything. It just shoves some buttons in your face and lets you run around a little bit and play. But beyond that, you're not going to get much out of it. So let's skip ahead to the meat and potatoes of this. Once you are complete with the tutorial, it pops up and says proceed to mission mode. I very much recommend you do this. The mission mode is a mixture of tutorials and mission mode with a bunch of different little challenges that you can go through and play through. I've gone through a bunch of these. I haven't finished all of them yet, but I have gone through a lot of them, and I decided to pick out a few of them that I think are very important for you as a beginner and for people in general as well. Like if you just want to like pick up this fighting game and haven't played Guilty Gear before, then absolutely take a look at some of these ones that I'm about to highlight. I've picked out 5 that I think you should look at, but this mission mode is really good. It's really worth your time. It actually has a lot of specific matchup content as well for how to punish various difficult punish things. So if you are struggling against a certain opponent, you can actually find punishes and things like that to deal with various things that are a little bit troublesome. The first mission mode I want you to really focus on is the blue psych burst. Bursting is an important mechanic in Guilty Gear. It's basically how you escape pressure. It basically lets you break out of a combo once someone's doing damage to you. You can use the burst to bust your way out of it. So it sets you up against Axel, who's trying to hit you. You can actually find a button to burst as well. I recommend doing this. If you press start and go into button settings, you can set one of your buttons to do it. I personally use the right trigger to do it, and once you're in damage, you can use the burst to get out of it. If you're constantly being pressured and run down, the blue psych burst is a fantastic way to get out of pressure. It's very much worth keeping in mind and using it liberally while you're still learning. The next tutorial I want to talk about is the Preemptive input tutorial. This is basically just teaching you to end your strings in a safe move. So as you go through your string, try and find a move that is unpunishable, basically a move that your opponent can't hit you out of, to end your strings with. This is super important as you're learning the game and as you're trying to develop a safe and more well-rounded playstyle. You will very rarely see high-level players or pro players do anything risky or do anything that is easily punished. And as you go from beginner to intermediate level, this becomes more and more important of having airtight moves and airtight strings that your opponent just cannot convert easily and freely into free damage. You'll know your opponent can punish you if they come out of the block string and are able to hit you with it. You can set that up in training mode. Watch the video I did about how to lab or how to counter everything to figure out how to set that up, but honestly it's not that hard. Just set your opponent to do like a punch after block, and they will try and punch you out of any string you do, and you can go and find safe moves. This is an extremely good habit to get into, and the earlier you build it, the better you'll get. Trust me, it's worth learning. The next mission I want to talk about is this one, dash and block. This is, honestly, it really blew my mind when I saw this, because this is an exercise that I actually did myself when I was learning Street Fighter. It's such an important thing to learn and to try and develop as a skill, and that is the ability to close distance without jumping. It's so tempting when your opponent is standing there spamming projectiles at you to jump up at them and try and air dash over and try and engage on them that way, but your opponent will often try and set up a situation where they're going to spam projectiles at you. You'll try and jump over and they'll be ready with some kind of anti-air. It's the most standard of standard zoning. It's everywhere, it's in every fighting game. Learning that you can close distance by just running forward and blocking and running forward and blocking and getting the timing down of it and getting a good feel for this is such an important skill, and it's also important for the person doing the zoning to learn how to do this as well. This really impressed me when I saw this in the training mode, because it's a really, really worthwhile exercise to learn that you can actually basically mash your face through projectiles by blocking intelligently and blocking cleverly, and grind your way forward, close the gap, and then hit your opponent. It's very, very worth getting this one down. It's worth practicing, worth getting a feel for the timing, and honestly, yeah, this is something that you should do. This is something you can train in training mode as well. You can set up a bot to just spam fireballs all day, and you will just be able to run at them with your character and see if you have various different ways of getting to them and getting around them without having to just use jump-ins, which is obvious and predictable. It is the invulnerable move reversal tutorial. This is very difficult to do, and it's one of the harder missions in the game. Do not worry about getting this right first time, but it's worth taking a look at just to appreciate how difficult it is to do an invulnerable reversal in this game. If you are very new to fighting games, don't worry too much about this one. If you're a bit more experienced, this is worth taking a look at to get a feel for A, how difficult reversals are, and B, to try and train them and practice them, because it is a skill worth learning. The last one I want to talk about is countering reversal invulnerable moves, because this is actually a very useful technique, and this is somewhat unique to Guilty Gear. But most notably, you have an invulnerable backdash. This one's a little bit strict. You have to avoid the reversal with the backdash. This will basically let you dodge the invulnerable reversal. It will also let you dodge people trying to wake up, grab you as well, which is quite common in this game because you can't grab someone when they're backdashing, and will set you up nicely for a punish. So it's worth just practicing a little bit. If you think your opponent's going to do something or press buttons or wake up, you can backdash and you'll be completely safe and able to punish whatever they do. Basically a pretty shimmy. To say that I'm impressed with the mission system is an understatement. Again, I cannot emphasize enough, please do go through the castle area and the forest area. It doesn't take you that long. I think the first two areas take you about half an hour all told, and it will teach you just about everything. Also, do not be afraid to go back and to learn various different things as well. If you're confused about things or you're unsure about things, certain things are going to be fairly niche, such as the gold psych bursts, the faultless defense, things like that are going to be a little bit weird to you at first and probably feel a little bit fancy and a little bit controversial. Well, not controversial, but just uncommon and kind of difficult to visualize and think about. But there's definitely things in here you just kind of need to learn and need to know about. The other thing I will also say, just circling back to new players, is one common issue that new players will often face is just doing fighting game inputs, doing quarter circles and things like that. Quarter circles, the Z input, for example, as well, or what people refer to as the DP or shuriken input, because that's what it is in Street Fighter, and that's kind of the iconic input. Again, do not feel bad about going into the dojo, going into training mode and just practicing and grinding these inputs out. Every single fighting game player will tell you the same thing, that you just have to practice, you just have to train, and you just have to run through these things until they feel natural. It will take time, you'll whiff inputs, you'll drop inputs. It's the same for everybody starting out, and you're all on even footing when doing so. The one trick I will give you, the one sort of gimmick I will give you, is if you want to do the Z input, from Soul's case, I have Kai set up to do some fancy stuff, but if you want to do the Volcanic Viper, the easiest way to do these inputs is to do forward and quarter circle forward. And also, if you're having trouble on the reversal super, not the reversal super, but the reversal Dragon Punch tutorial, one tip I have for you is when you get knocked down, hold the forward button, and then that just transforms the input you need to do into a quarter circle plus slash, which is very nice. Because you'll notice if you try running at your opponent and then try and do a quarter circle plus slash, you'll always get the DP. You'll always get the Volcanic Viper, which is good to know. It's a very useful little tip. But otherwise, yeah, do not feel bad about just spending a bunch of time just practicing how to do these inputs, and try and get them down from both sides as well, where you are just getting the quarter circles. You want your inputs to be as clean as possible. Don't expect them to be clean early on, but it is something just to keep in the back of your mind, that if you are like spamming really hard, sometimes that will cause your inputs to drop and not work as well. So it's worth just trying to get clean with these things. The cleaner you get, the easier it gets, the better you will get over time. The final new player tip I will give you is just have fun. Try not to worry too much about what the other player is doing, or, well, that's a terrible thing to say, Josh, but try not to worry too much about what the other player might think of you, or what the other player might be thinking about. Like, I had this problem a lot when I got started with fighting games, where I would constantly be worried that my opponent was judging me somehow, or that my opponent was making fun of me, or something like that. Very rarely will that actually happen at low levels. Honestly, 99.9% of the time, your opponent is going to be super busy, worried about their own stuff and the stuff that they're doing. Spending a little bit of time playing with bots is good, but spending time playing against people is going to do you way, way better. If you are having basic execution issues or having problems with executing combos, spending some time in training mode to just get those down is fine. I will put a video up as well of sort of how to get started online and the kind of tools you'll need to develop as a player when you go online, but just have fun with the game is honestly the best advice anyone can give you. Do not care, especially if you're new, do not care a jot about your rank, about your rating on the tower system. Just go into those lobbies, go into the ranked system, because it will try and match you with low-level players and new players that will be learning alongside you, and it is absolutely worth going into a system that has matchmaking rather than going into the parks, which will have people of all different skill levels playing against each other. You will probably get roasted in those. You want to go to the tower system, let your rank drop. Honestly, it doesn't matter in the slightest. I cannot emphasize this enough. As Stylosa always said in Overwatch, it's so much more true in fighting games. Rank is irrelevant. It really doesn't matter. What you want is good matchmaking for yourself. You'll only get that in the ranked system. Otherwise, I'll be putting together bits and pieces for new players. I just wanted to try and guide people towards the mission mode and guide people towards some of these missions. Don't feel bad if you can't do the reversal one. It's difficult. It's really, really difficult. I struggle with that one, and I'm sure I've seen like pros struggle with that one. Reversals in this game are hard. They're very hard, but it's also there to kind of teach you, if you are a little bit more of an intermediate player, reversals are difficult in this game. You gotta be real careful when you go for them. So hopefully just spreading the information out there so people will stop just reversaling out of all my Milia pressure. Otherwise, yeah, thank you for joining me on this short little video. There'll be another one tomorrow with a bunch of new player tips for dealing with ranked and dealing with some of the tool set that you will need to deal with the game as you go forward and as you start to develop. Otherwise, thank you for joining me. I've been Josh, it's one voice amongst many, and I'll see you in the next one. Doodly. You know, the nice thing about Guilty Gear Strive is when it starts up, it gives you plenty of time to sit back, enjoy your coffee, lubricate the throat, sit up straight, adjust your posture, check that everything's working in OBS when you're recording, read Twitter, write a novel. It's nice like that, you know? It lets you calm down and relax before the game begins, because bloody hell. Come on. Why is the server so slow? Why is it so slow?